The following podcast is intended for mature audiences. If you enjoy our work, please like, comment, subscribe, and follow the links in the description. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
Greetings and salutations, listener. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined, as always, by, these memes are so, overdone at this point that I don't even feel like saying them, the boy.
I feel like we just witnessed the death of a bit, everybody.
No, not our bit. Our bit is 100% pure, quality. I mean, Stranger Things memes.
Oh, just your standard. It's popular, so I don't like it. But okay.
I'm just so tired of hearing it. Welcome to the Turners Podcast.
Yeah, what's up?
Talking about Stranger Things because I finally watched both seasons late last year, and we had other shit to talk about on the podcast. But before we do that, I do want to mention those of you who listened last week and experienced a weird 5 seconds of silence before we started talking after the theme music stopped.
Oh my god, did you forget to cut the 5 seconds of silence?
I forgot to cut the 5 seconds of silence and didn't notice until I uploaded it, and I was like, oh, great.
That's below even your usual editing standard. That's impressive.
I think that's the first time I've forgotten to cut that, and we've always done that 5 seconds. We used to do it for ambience to get, to noise filter out.
Yeah, basically we used to do it so we could later go in and cut out the background noise. But we got much better mics, so we don't need to do it anymore. Now it's just sort of part of the ritual.
Yeah. So, boy, why don't you watch Stranger Things first? So why don't you start us off?
I watched Stranger Things, I think pretty much the weekend it came out. Maybe a little bit after. A friend recommended it to me. I don't quite remember how I found out about it, but I think a friend recommended it to me, or the roommate. And
I think I'd been watching the ads and stuff for it, and just sort of
same. Maybe we just watched it at the same time and we were talking about it. I honestly can't remember too much about what was happening when I watched it, but I remember I started watching it, and that's what I did with my weekend. Is I basically for a day I didn't sleep until I was done. I just watched the show all the way from beginning to end, like a big, multi-episode movie. Which is how I think I've mentioned on the podcast before, how I prefer to watch Netflix series and how I think they're best absorbed. At least some of them.
Well, I think it's intentional. I agree with you, certainly, because I don't think they'd release them all at once if it was something that was meant to be watched episodic every week. You can, certainly, but it's not like they don't update their shit every week,
They work, so a lot of them work so much better if you watch them all at once. Mm-hmm. I was immediately enthralled by the series. It's an absolute... It's so weird that we haven't talked about it before now in depth on the podcast.
In depth? Well, no, because I had every intention of watching it.
Because it is so much of what I love about things. Mm-hmm. It is... You've probably seen this a bunch online because it's so clear that many people made this connection. But, and this is my hipster cred here, I swear to God that I thought of this independently from the other people on the internet. This is like if you asked Stephen King to adapt something written, or Steven Spielberg to adapt something written by Stephen King.
Yeah,
that's very much... You would get Stranger Things. If Stranger Things was a short story written by Stephen King that had a title that was way too long, and then you would ask Steven Spielberg to adapt it, it would come out as Stranger Things. It would probably be Strange Occurrences in the Town of Hawkins. And then it adapts into Stranger Things. This is what you would get. I think the Duffer Brothers did an amazing job of distilling very important things to them about their childhood and making it shine.
Well, this appealed to me as well because, it's funny, since year one, we haven't really talked about it much, but I'm a massive horror fan. I like scary shit. And I don't necessarily like to be scared. I mean, I guess a little bit I do, but it's often inconvenient in adulthood staying up until the sun rises just so you can be sure that there aren't aliens secretly lurking behind every door. But I love horror. I love suspense. I love dark and supernatural things. And this really seemed, especially with the suburban 80s setting, to be right up my alley. And I watched the first episode, and I fucking hated it.
It's okay. He's allowed to be wrong about things. I mean,
well, it just, I don't want to say that. Rather, I don't want to misrepresent what happened here. And there was a reason I put it off, was because my wife and I hadn't seen Twin Peaks. And I had heard that the final scene of Stranger Things Season 1 had some very strong, echoes from the last scene of Twin Peaks, of the original series.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, I can see that, is what it ended up being. I thought it was, way more heavily linked. So we went ahead and watched that first, and it was like, okay, time to watch Stranger Things. And, much like E.T., much like the opening scene of E.T., that first episode does not fully represent what the rest of that fucking series is.
I don't know that I entirely agree. I feel like it did a great job of establishing what you were in for. Not specifically they start you out light and then they dip heavier, but I really liked that first episode. I think it did a great job of drawing you in.
Well, and okay, so for most people, you're probably right. It starts you out light on the supernatural horror and then dips you heavier later. But that's what I'm ready for. So when it starts me out with a bunch of kids swearing and, people being shitty, that drives me away really hard. That's not what I'm here for.
But you have to understand that that's just the first scene being monster eats a person is not.
Oh, no,
that would be vastly doing a disservice to the rest of that's not. That would be bad filmmaking.
That's also not what I'm saying. But it's not. I'm not. Gosh, I'm trying to find the way to phrase this properly to get my point across. I was young when South Park came out. So the idea of children swearing doesn't automatically earn endearment points to me the way it does most people. Also, because when I was a child, I didn't swear.
That's what it is. Because the first thing is just, no, that's not how it works.
Well, no,
it's not that, oh, they're swearing, it's adorable. It's just that it's, for most people, it's just how kids actually talk.
I didn't. My friends really didn't. I was 13 before I said crap.
And that I feel is a much more understandable reason why it may have come across as odd or grating.
It's not that it's... I get what's going on there. They're trying to ground these characters and make them a strong reference point for people to look back on their own youths. But it was so much not my youth that, instead of grounding me, it disconnects me really hard. And when the first episode... It's just
so weird, because so much of your youth was playing D&D, and that's where they start.
None of my youth was playing D&D. I didn't get to play D&D until I was a teenager.
That's right. That was a teen. You had books when you were a kid, right?
I had the books, yeah, but I didn't. I just looked at the monster manual.
Yeah.
Which is about, that anchor, that hit, that was fine. But, there was... I had a lovely childhood. Mostly full of being by myself and playing video games. And not really stepping outside the boundaries of what rules were set before me.
And I understand that, but I didn't really have much of this as a child either. I was a very, I didn't have a lot. I had some childhood friends, but most of my time was spent by myself.
Sure.
And I didn't play D&D. I didn't really have a lot of kids that I hung out with outside of school.
But the emotional anchor point was there. The 12-year-old badass, if you will. And I don't mean that sarcastically. I mean, this kid who is clearly just a kid who does not give a fuck.
I don't know which of those kids you're talking about, because that doesn't fit any of them, really.
You must be misunderstanding what I'm saying. Doesn't give a fuck about, you shouldn't swear, or you shouldn't be mean, or don't ride your bike too far away from home,
To me, that just reads as normal kid.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you have that anchor point because to you that's normal kid.
Like this is just
This
weird.
is not where I expected to take the beginning 10 minutes of this.
Because we're finding out a lot about you, because I would argue that for most people that's just normal kid.
I agree entirely. I feel like it was a personal disconnect, and like I only realized that,
After the fact.
yeah, in hindsight. At the time I was just like, why is this thing that everybody's been talking about and talking about how wonderful and endearing it is, why is it just kids making wiener jokes? I don't
Like, and I understand why you would have come to that conclusion, but I feel like by the end of the first episode, they don't bury the lead. Will's gone via demon abduction by like 20 minutes in?
Sure, but like if the, and excuse me for being blunt because we're trying to get a podcast down here, but if the characters I'm following are the rest of the Animal House, it doesn't make me want to watch them save him.
I guess it's just another one of the, we can chalk this into the, like, I don't know how to phrase that without sounding mean.
I have a very specific perspective, unfortunately, in times, and fortunately in others. But it's just not, it's not exactly what, it doesn't get hit by the melange of what should appeal to everyone easily. Now, that being said, I was encouraged by the boy and a couple of other people to check out the second episode and stick it through till the third one, which by the end of the second one, I was totally fine. The second episode was more about the spirit and the heart of the characters and went a little heavier into, people trying to do the right thing and, the horror and supernatural elements. And that was what I came there for. And once that set in, it was a lot more like what I expected.
It feels sort of inherently stingy not to extend a little bit of trust to a thing you're trying to absorb,
I've done a lot of thought exercises around that because, as you guys know, if you've listened to the podcast before, there was a period where I did a little experiment where I watched, I don't even remember, I think it was 10 TV shows I watched the first season of.
Equivalent.
And, like, they were not, like, it wasn't like, oh, this show is bad, that people didn't like and I was watching it to punish myself kind of thing. It was stuff that was critically acclaimed that for whatever reason, either because I didn't think it was going to be good or because I just hadn't gotten around to it, that I hadn't watched.
Or you thought, like, there was also some things in there that you thought maybe were probably not as good as people were saying.
I mean, yeah, like, it just didn't pique my interest, from a conceptual standpoint. I would qualify that as in not going to be good. And, like, some of the ones that I've heard wonderful things about, I watched the whole first season, and if it wasn't for the experiment, I would have felt like I wasted my fucking time. Like, that was
like
10
Lost.
hours of my life. Like, fucking Lost, where even the nicest characters except Hurley ended up being shits by the end of the season. Like, no redemption, no one to root for except Hurley. And even then, I mean, only sort of. He's not a very active character.
Okay.
But, or like, Mad Men, which has been, like, so critically acclaimed. And above and beyond my usual complaint, it's just an ugly little show. Which is popular, so I understand why people like it. I just don't like ugly little shows. And so on and so forth. So, like, I went through this, and with a couple of notable exceptions, by the end of the first episode, I knew what I was in for. Oddly enough, one of those notable exceptions, Vampire Diaries, horrible first episode, gets better. But, so, I was willing to give this more, just at that time. I didn't want to push myself. One of those situations where you're already in a bad mood.
It's like, if I continue, I don't care if the rest of this is good. I've already decided that I hate it.
Yeah, so I just kind of needed to get over myself, and one thing led to another, and I didn't get around to watching it until late last year, as November.
Basically, after the second season came out.
Yeah, it was after the second season came out. So, overall, I enjoyed it. Overall, I really dug it. I mean, it's not like it was anything life-changing. It's not like I've got a new fandom now or something, but I really enjoyed it. I'll probably watch season 3 when it comes out. unless it, looks like it's really going off the rails and isn't something I'd enjoy. But yeah,
actually, you know what's interesting?
Yeah.
I loved the first season of Stranger Things. I really did. I think it was a great sort of watershed for what the Netflix model of making things can do. I think it was a great, along with the first season of Daredevil, or to a different degree Jessica Jones. It showed what you can do with that sort of time and ability to craft and ability to tell one cohesive narrative. I think the second season, I really loved that. I actually liked it. I don't know more. I don't know about more. It's a different series in the second season. It goes for different tropes, intentionally so, because they just didn't want to make the same thing again. I recently listened to an interview with the Duffer Brothers, and they were talking about how they wanted to make something that felt like the same show, but consciously didn't want to make the same thing again, because no one wants just the same thing again. I mean, I kind of did, but I understand that my taste is sort of shit. But I liked the second season, and I like the conclusion, the arc, and the. I like the sort of grace note that everything ends on in the second season, and how it all wraps up so much that I'll probably watch the third season, but I don't need to.
I mentioned this to a friend last night, actually, that I'm not really sure where they can go from here.
That won't be downhill. This might be one of those things where where the Duffer Brothers or anyone else involved in the series has a real chance to surprise me, because I don't know how you can continue that story without souring the really, really solid ending you gave that second season.
I feel like they really just have to move on to, if you will, go from Daleks to Cybermen. You know what I mean? Like, different threat from a different place.
Yeah, just do something new, but even then, I genuinely, and I'm not an uncreative person, I'm not terribly good at making up stories, but I know how to fit together. I have a good toolkit for telling fiction. I know how stuff fits together. I don't know how you can continue that story. To me, season 1 and season 2 of Stranger Things on Netflix are one nice contiguous sort of story with a nice solid intermission in the end that allows you to move forward emotionally with the characters, and everything ends so pitch perfect 80s movie, neat ending with a little bit of a stinger. I don't know where to go from there that isn't bad.
Was there a stinger in season 2?
Yeah, at the end of the season 2, spoilers for season 2 of Stranger Things. It's recent enough that I feel like that's fair.
That's fine. They couldn't see my face.
But at the end, they've defeated Zabadi, and they've locked him away in the Upside Down, and they're at the snowball.
Yeah.
And they're dancing, and then after, as they're dancing, it pulls out of the snowball and shows them, the outside of the gym with the music playing, and then the camera slowly turns upside down, and we transfer to the Upside Down, and the Mind Flayer is he knows where they are. He's watching. He's waiting.
I mean, yeah, I guess
it's a little bit of a stinger, but it's not too much of one. It's not like the end of season 1 of Stranger Things.
Right.
Where it was there was so much left that I needed to know, and so much that I still wanted to, I wanted to know, is Eleven going to come back? What's the problem with Will? How are they going to get over this? Is there going to be fallout from the various deaths? So on and so forth. I was so engaged. At the end of season 2, everything sort of wrapped up. And I think that was intentional too. They wanted to close the story off. That way, in the next season, they can move forward.
And I feel like that ending stinger was less, this is what we're going to be dealing with in season 3 sort of stinger, and more, and I'm just echoing your point here, and more, yeah, he's still out there, and more being that traditional, this is the end of a horror anthology series, Oh, is question mark the end? You know,
Yeah. It's the end question.
They could also never go back to the Mind Flayer ever again, and it would still make perfect sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. They might be the best way of doing things.
Honestly, yeah. So, okay, I get, like, from a narrative standpoint, from a plotting standpoint, from, like, a omnibus standpoint, why you would want to continue until, say, graduation.
They actually aren't planning on it. From what I understand, they're planning on like 4 or 5 seasons of this show maximum. Mm-hmm. They might have to do time skips because children age in real time, unfortunately, and like children also need time off from filming television shows.
Sure.
So they might make it to high school graduation or whatever. I don't know that I need to see, like, Stranger Things, the kids part of Stranger Things. And that's actually something I want to talk about because the adults in Stranger Things and the teenagers in Stranger Things and the kids in Stranger Things all have really well-developed character arcs that are separate from each other and mesh well together. Mm-hmm. This kids part of Stranger Things is such a perfect, like, coming-of-age tale, like you want those sorts of stories to be.
Yeah.
That I don't feel like I need to see them continue on.
No, they're of age now. Like, we solved the story, and all was well. You know what I mean?
The adults, like, they're both, the two major leads are Winona Ryder, who plays, God, I don't remember her name, Joyce?
Mom.
Joyce Byers? Yeah, Joyce Byers. Glad I got that.
And
then David Harbour, who does Sheriff Town Name.
Sheriff Town Name, excuse me.
David Harbour, who plays Jim Hopper, they're really the two adult leads in the first season. In the second season, they add good old Samwise.
If I can interject here, I just want to say that...
I'm jabbering, man. Feel free to interject.
That's fine. I really expected his role to go differently. Sean Astin, that is, in case you guys aren't Lord of the Rings fans. I really liked Paul Reiser. I was really happy when he wasn't secretly a bad guy.
Oh, me too.
Like, that was just such a good...
so ham-fisted if Paul Reiser were like...
It would have been exhausting. I don't know about ham-fisted, but it would have been just exhausting.
Yeah, you're right. I was wrong. Not ham-fisted. I would have been a little on the nose.
Yeah, a little too on the nose. Just like, come on, guys. You could have done better. No. He actually genuinely cares, and that makes me like his character 1,000% more. You know?
And they don't save... It's not a reveal. Like, halfway through the season, like, one of the other scientists, one of the bad guy scientists says... they're talking about, well, if we just burn this away, this might solve the issue. And the guy goes, right, but that'll kill... Paul Reiser's character goes, that will kill the kid. And he goes, with all due respect, sir, so what? And Paul Reiser, in the most badass line delivery of his entire career, holds up one sheet of paper, points at the guy and says, say that to me again. And you can tell that the thing that will happen if he does so is Paul Reiser's gonna fucking choke a bitch. And it's the best line read.
It's so good.
Really, it like clarifies in one sentence, no, this is one of the good guys.
Yeah.
And I like that. There's so many little things about this series I love. Mm-hmm. There's so many little things about this series I love. There's so many little things that are within littler things about this that I find to be really, really good storytelling. I could Guardians of the Galaxy about this fucking show for a while.
Is that your prompt to ask me to shit on it?
I mean, like, the Two Nerds podcast is a positive area, and I could give a lot of really like well thought out stuff, but I mean, it's important that you talk on the Two Nerds podcast also.
But like, okay, so overall, I did like the series. There were a couple episodes I thought kind of dragged, kind of not super necessary. Didn't really add much.
I agree that there were a couple episodes that were slower, but I liked them.
And I'm not 100% sure that New Girl's brother's subplot was entirely necessary.
Would you like to know why New Girl's brother's subplot, his name, I will grab his name really quick. Would you like to know why he's there?
Yeah, sure.
The full actual reason
Sure.
why this character is in the show. They wanted a human antagonist.
Okay.
They didn't want all the antagonists of season 2 to be extra normal.
Fair.
They didn't want to completely separate it from reality like that.
Okay. That's fine. I mean, it wasn't bad. It just was kind of... It lifts right out. You know, and that's not a sin. Like, you can put something in there just to put something in there.
Him and Max both sort of lift right out.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Max,
she does.
Max sort of acts as like a plot device to give a little bit more rope to 11 to let her go find herself.
Yeah, and it also gives the guys something to do and something to argue over before they come back together.
It gives them a plot line,
which is not a plot line I'm fond of.
And she's not a bad character. She's actually quite a good character.
Like, I like her. Like, if I was age appropriate, I would have had a little crush on her, I'm sure. Just knowing myself. But,
yeah, cool chick with a skateboard who likes video games. Yeah, no, I don't know why. To be honest, like, I think if I was age appropriate, I don't think there's any doubt as to which of those characters I would have a crush on.
Well, I feel like...
Dustin.
Yeah, I feel like Dustin in that sense, where like, someone who's cooler than me, and she's a girl.
But like, it's a really excellent way of framing things. But I feel like you're right; they lift right out. Sure. I am having like Max's brother. I don't remember his name, so I'm having trouble finding him.
It was like Snake or Jab or something like that.
Snake or Jab. That's amazing. Thank you for that.
Comb.
I don't think it's Cone.
Jet.
Billy Hargrove.
I was close.
No, Billy is not close to any of those things. But yeah, they wanted him to have. Just wanted to have a human antagonist. They wanted to show just an asshole, and Steve wasn't that guy anymore. Steve stopped being just an asshole like 60% of the way through season 1.
Yeah.
And now Steve is your cool older brother.
By the end of season 1, he's the cool guy. Steve was like, oh, okay, I'm in this for Steve now.
Steve is great. I love Steve because he's your cool older brother. And I never had that growing up.
I love at some awards that happened last night as of recording this, Sheriff Town Name had a Team Steve in Stranger Things font shirt under his fancy clothes.
Because, I mean, Team Steve.
Sheriff Town Name. We should probably explain.
Yeah, probably. One thing I want to get across, if I was 10 years younger, if I was 20 when this came out, instead of almost 30, I'd be Team Jonathan Byers all the way. Because he's tortured and brooding and he's deep and all that, and that would have resonated with me, and I would want him to get the girl. Nah, Team Steve. Steve's a good dude.
I don't really care about, he's an okay character. Jonathan, that is.
One last bit of fanboyism, and I will get to the thing that you want to think.
Yeah, sure, go for it, man.
Look, I understand justice for Barb, hashtag all that. Where's my justice for Benny?
Yes, I agree, justice for Benny. Also, I don't, okay, before I actually watched the series, this was my sum of knowledge of Stranger Things. You guys ready for this? I don't even think I told the boy this. All right, there's a Demogorgon. It looks like one of those monsters from The Last of Us.
Little bit.
Yeah. There's a thing called the Upside Down, which is under the regular, I guess. I don't know. One of the kids goes down there, and that's bad. Gotta find him. 11 likes waffles.
Eggos, specifically.
Sure. And Barb got a raw deal.
Which, no, I'm sorry. Benny got a raw deal. Barb was being a downer buzzkill, trying to take her friend away from a party where she was having a good time of her own free will. Barb was being lame and got killed for it, and that's sad because she's a teenager and, all that, justice for Barb, fine, I understand, I sympathize. But she was being a downer buzzkill, and her friend didn't want to leave, and she was really trying to fucking drag her down about it.
Well,
Benny was trying to protect a child, and he got axed by getting shot in the head. Where's my justice for Benny?
Outside of that, Barb was barely a character. She was in 3 episodes, maybe 10% of each of those episodes.
And she was pretty two-dimensional.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck, Tumblr, but whatever. Sheriff Town Name. Let's get that out of the way.
I like it because one of the things, the Justice for Barb reaction, was one of the reasons that they made that a big plot point in Season 3, and I think that's a really good plot point, or Season 2. I think it's a really good plot point for season 2 because it makes the emotional weight of things really exist.
I think it's a really good plot point for season 2 because, yes, emotional weight and realism. These characters have to deal with this fucked up thing that happened because in the end of the day, no one really knew. What the hell was that guy's name?
Which guy?
The guy who got killed.
Benny.
No one really knew.
I mean, some of them did, but none of the people were watching.
Yeah. But also, it's very important because it led us to the conspiracy theorist. And he was the best. That whole series of scenes was phenomenal.
Oh, he's so good. He's such a good character. He's like such an amazing little Greek chorus of a character.
Yeah,
and
it was good stuff. Yes, let's clarify Sheriff Town name so I can get on to talking about the thing everyone is expecting me to talk about. I'm bad at remembering characters' names.
he really genuinely is.
I used to be good at remembering names.
We've covered this in the Game of Thrones podcast.
Yes,
actually.
we sure as hell did.
Magnar Thin.
But then I worked in the restaurant industry, and turnover is so hard in the restaurant industry that it does not behoove you to remember names, and that sucks, but it's real. And I in that time lost my ability to remember people's names. It's not a skill I have anymore. Now, I can still do it, but it's not a passive. I have to activate it.
You have to actively try to remember.
So, like, even when they say these characters' names 1,000 fucking times.
Which, I mean, to be fair, if you were to do a little word cloud of the shit that's said in, like, the first 4 episodes of Stranger Things, Hopper would be one of the bigger words. Will would be the only thing that's bigger.
I remember Will and 11. That's about all I actually remembered at the end of season 1. The rest of them had descriptor names. I'm sure if you guys were on the internet, and God, if you're watching our podcast, I hope you were, when Game of Thrones first got started and there was that meme going around of stupid names to describe all the characters, that was me. That was, like, not actually, but that's how I roll. Or at the end of Honest Trailers.
Yeah, he does. Basically, he gives Honest Trailers names to every character in fiction until they pass a certain I give a shit about this threshold.
Yes. And I don't like that about myself, but at least it's amusing.
So here's how we got. That's the backstory for Sheriff Town name.
Yeah, that's how we got to that point. So I couldn't remember his fucking name, and Boy's like, Hopper. It's Hopper. It's really easy. So I was talking to him the other day. My brain, or not the other day, days after that. This was months ago. My brain goes, okay, it's an H word. Sheriff Hawkins. Boy's like, no, that's the name of the town, man.
The name of the town is Hawkins. And then he says, and this is a quote, right? It says it on the side of his car, so. That was so deeply amusing to me that I had to respond, no, a lot of people who write their names in giant font on the sides of their cars, do you?
And I do, because I grew up around a lot of plumbers and construction workers who either rent the car or borrow the car from their over company so their name's on it so they can be held responsible for it, or are independent contractors who need to get their name out there.
So their name's on it in big giant text.
Yeah, so I do know a lot of people who drive around with their name on the side of their car.
Which makes this make sense, but henceforth he became Sheriff Town name. Like he was... the best part of this is he didn't remember this character's name, and this was his favorite character in the show.
Oh, yeah, deadly serious. I love this guy. He's perfect.
Oh, dude. Sheriff Hopper is just... He's aces. He is... There are so many times in this series where he makes the Hopper face.
I have rolled the sorry, but I'm going to punch you now face into my expressions, much the same way I stole men from that guy in in Thor Ragnarok. Like, it's just something that is good enough that I need it to be part of me now.
I love that he's playing Hellboy in the Hellboy reboot.
Hell yeah, dude. That's awesome. Like, I found out about that after I saw the series because I'm behind on life, and I was like, good.
One, that's a great cast for Hellboy. Two, he goes to the gym and, does, Hugh Jackman's workout, and he's in a bodysuit for that. He doesn't need to do that.
I would if I was Hellboy. I'd get swole. But, okay, so, let's end this on a bad note. Let's end with an argument.
Let's end this on a contentious note. So there's one specific episode of the second season of Stranger Things.
It's enough. Y'all already fucking know what I'm talking about if you've seen the show, because on fan communities online, they call it the episode. So divisive it is.
I love the episode and think it's a great... I think many things about it are excellent ways to handle things. There's a lot of different sections of that. But I think it was a really good choice. I think it was done really well, and I'm very interested and very intrigued by it.
I feel as though it was interesting. I agree. I like the idea of the Morlocks. I'm curious to see what else they could do with that. But, like, there's a difference between a tonal reset, a breath in terms of pacing, and going to watch a different goddamn show for an hour.
Like, you've been watching The Nutty Professor, and then you just leave and watch Twister for an hour?
Yeah, no, you watch The Nutty Professor, and then you leave and you go watch Saw for like 10 minutes before you finish The Nutty Professor.
I don't know that the tone is that different in tone.
Oh, well, no, it's not that different, but, like, it's not also as similar as Twister.
I don't think Twister and The Nutty Professor are similar, my man.
I don't either. It's as though you were sitting around watching E.T. and then stopped at the last 10 minutes to go watch an X-Men movie and then came back.
Yeah, actually, that's fair. That's because but like the beginning of an X-Men movie.
Yeah, just the beginning. It just, like, the characters were... It was...
But I love those characters so much.
Sure, but I would love to love those characters more. I would love them to have development. I would love to understand them better. I would love to see them work in their own environment over several episodes. I don't like it when shows do this anyway, and it's usually more tonally consistent. Criminal Minds did it twice, I believe.
Where they're trying to backdoor pilot stuff?
Yeah, where they're backdoor piloting shit. And, like, man, sometimes that works, and sometimes it fucking doesn't. And, like, it's usually like, okay, so instead of the show I want to watch, I get to watch the pilot for this shit, and every now and then the characters I actually give a shit about will make a guest appearance. But it was so much different. Like, I respect that it had to be there to help Eleven's character along, and I like that it's part of the continuity, but I would have rather they snipped that fucking episode. We had the surprise reveal, and then, like, immediately after that shit went online, one of the Duffers or both got on to say, and you will see more about where Eleven was in Stranger Things Gaiden.
I understand that outlook. I do. I really do. I don't happen to agree. I think it was an excellent tonal shift. I think it excellently keeps you on suspense for what's happening later. If I had one change, I honestly think I would, because, like, the episode, it happens, and then we go back, and then at the end of the episode after that, we get Eleven returning with her new look. I would put what happened to get Eleven her new look after that.
You know, that might even be better. Yeah, I might not have disliked it as much.
If that was, because that gives you a natural thematic and narrative entry point and a question you want answered.
Yes, instead of just giving you the answer before you have the question. Because, you know, in a meta sense, we all assume Eleven's coming back to save the day.
But when you have her, like, you see her go back at the end of the episode, she's going back to save her friends. When they're, you know, and then when they surround them by, you know, they're in the house later in the next episode and they're surrounded by enemies. That's a clear, like, it's almost like you're like watching a wrestling thing and you see the ref, like, make the sign for the other guy to come out. Like, time to do your run in 11, time to clear the ring.
Yeah. It was a little too telegraphed.
I liked it. But I would have put those two episodes together and then led up all the way to the house where they're at their nadir, where shit's as bad as it's gonna get, and they're surrounded by enemies and they're fucked, and then demo dog through the window, bunch of neck snaps, you know what's happening, and then she comes in and she's got this weird new look, and then they stop it right there.
Yeah, end of the episode.
Into the next episode.
Then you go to X-Men Evolution.
And then you start, like, you do just a little bit of in media res, just because it's already not time synced, what happens with 11 and what's happening with them. You do a little bit of in media res, you go, like, 2 days earlier, and then you follow 11 through her whole little journey, through that same 11 bottle episode, and then you see from her perspective walking up on the cabin and just taking a breath, stealing herself, and that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, because it's not even like they have to meet a specific length requirement per episode. They vary wildly.
So, like, you just ended on her, like, seeing her friends surrounded. She takes a breath, steals herself. You watch, like, the steel go into her spine, like it does when she's
maybe a little bit of nosebleed
when she's getting ready to fuck somebody up, and then you cut back, and then the beginning of the next episode is the beginning of the episode where that goes. Yeah. You don't have to change the number of episodes. You only have to change a little bit. Maybe add one extra scene, take out a scene somewhere, just for, like, pacing.
It's not bad. I dig it.
I think that would be a much better move, and I think it would have been received a lot better without changing the episode at all. I feel like it's a great episode. I feel like it's very, very slightly misplaced.
Now, I would be remiss if I didn't point out one thing. Mm-hmm. Only because I mentioned it previously on the podcast, but because I think you and I kind of came to an agreement, an understanding anyway,
all right,
about this nitpick. But I did set it up podcasts ago that I would talk about it, so I do want to mention it. Another part of the reason the episode stood out for me is that the Duffer Brothers so wonderfully recreate the visual vibe of suburban 1980s life. Like, I was super young in the 80s. I was super, super young. But all of my memories of what shit looked like Stranger Things.
Because you're from a small town.
Sure, yeah, it's that small town shit. So, I mean, they do it so perfectly. And then they go to a big city, and it's so fucking clean.
And this is the thing that I want to that actually is contentious, because you have, what do you think the 80s, people knew how to wash things in the 80s.
They did. I'm not, it's not like, it doesn't need to be downtown Detroit, but if you look at news footage or if you look at commercials, and speaking as somebody who recreationally watches commercials from the 80s and 90s, when it's live shit from the city, the good parts of cities were not that clean. In the last 20 years, America has taken a strong initiative to clean up the cities.
Do you mean like smoggier, or do you mean like, because
they
weren't physically dirtier?
No, I mean, like, they were. Like the streets and the buildings, and he Googling it.
I'm Googling it because I don't feel like you're right. You have a weird warped version of how filthy cities were in the 80s.
And I'm not talking
People
about,
knew how to wash things.
But they didn't have the money to be washing things.
What?
Or there weren't regulations to, so they were spending their money on other shit like Coke parties. It was the 80s after all. And I'm not talking about like this horrible, post-apocalyptic sludge.
You know what? It's probably what? Where would they be? It's Hawkins, Illinois?
They're in Chicago.
So it's Chicago. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And it's not much. I mean, the graffiti's great, and like the train yard itself looked okay.
It's not that clean in there. It seems like fine. Because you're right, things were a little bit, shall we say, earthier in like the inner city in the 80s, sure, before like the rise of green power and smog, mm-hmm, and before cars got cleaner, and yeah, before your hatred of blue lights. I understand. But like,
and it's not like, if this was just a scene or something, I doubt I'd even fucking notice. But you've already taken me out of it so much that it adds this extra tiny layer of artifice to things, and I'm like, what the heck?
Like, this is what Chicago looked like in the 80s.
That looks worse than I was saying.
What?
Look at that fine layer of dust.
No, dude, it's just that there's a yellow... It's just that the camera's yellow.
Well, and maybe that's all it was. Maybe it's just that they didn't account for all the blue that was naturally there now. I don't know. Maybe the color balance just got thrown off by the person editing that section.
Maybe they should have put like a yellow filter.
Maybe, or whatever. It threw me off a little bit, and I only mention this because I set it up in the fucking Turbo Kid podcast. I told you guys I would talk about it, so we talked about it.
I've got such a Like, this is such an interesting part of your psyche.
Well,
you expect things from the 80s in cities to be like a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
No, it's not that bad. I mean, it's funnier to say it is, but I don't think...
I'm memeing.
Sure. Just...
Like, there's pictures from 1980.
Yeah, dude. Everything is browner.
Yeah, it's... Alright, so it is literally just that cameras took pictures yellower back then.
Well, not even just cameras, man. Shit just was. Like,
The Earth was yellower?
There was just more dirt everywhere. There was more wear, more grime. Like stain. There was more stain. Let me put it that way. You know how sometimes you can have a kitchen floor and you move the fridge, and even though the rest of the kitchen floor is clean, that space under the fridge is
You're talking about, like, nicotine stain.
Sure, yeah, you could smoke outside back then, too.
You can do that now.
Well, not in front of businesses and shit.
But, like, you're talking about, like, nicotine stain.
Stain and just wear and stuff.
So, okay, all right. I think I'm getting it. Listener. He's saying
this
dirty.
This is a weird end to a podcast.
I'm trying to understand.
No, I ain't hating. I'm feeling for the listener, that's all.
You're saying dirty. I don't think that's what you mean. And I think I can finally understand what you're talking about to a better degree. You mean lived in.
Yeah.
You mean, okay, because it's pretty clear, in contrast to, like, Hawkins, which is shot, like, in a small town as far as I'm aware.
Sure.
It's much more clear that the warehouse, your major set piece for most of that episode, because there are pieces that take place in a city.
Yeah,
but it's very small, controlled sections because they got to period it up.
I think the apartment was okay.
The apartment was, I'm sure,
the
fine.
Gas station was a little.
The gas station
too clean.
The gas
only
station
a little.
The
warehouse was the worst offender.
The warehouse is the most obvious soundstage in Stranger Things.
Yes, it certainly is.
That's what you're talking about. It looks artificial. It doesn't look like it's actual. People are actually living there.
Sure.
It's missing the little bits and bobs.
Yes.
I understand now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's just because it is your major set. It's your major set.
Yeah,
and it is kind of obviously a set.
Yes.
Things are a little too poised. Stuff looks a little bit too arranged to look like disheveled and to look like it's meant to be meant to be rebellious.
Like, and for example
dangerous.
here, and again, we want to go a few steps back from this because again, we're talking about Detroit. But look at The Crow. Look at its sets compared to
it is
that.
I think you're right. I don't know that it was. It might not have been. It might just been differences, or it might just have been like a happenstance thing. But I think it works in either case, whether it was intentional or not, because Kali is artifice. That's her whole shtick.
Yeah,
is presenting a front that presents a certain image. That's how she takes the power back from the way she was treated.
Well, and one could even speculate that, this whole thing looks better because she's making it look better.
Everything looks slightly poised because she makes it look more poised.
Mm-hmm.
She wants it to look more poised because it fits her image. It looks run down and shitty, but not too much. It looks shitty in an artful manner, like a rich guy who's voluntarily living in a loft apartment.
Right.
Because that's who she is. She's embracing her rage and her bitterness, and she's embracing her power to give herself the patina of being in control, because that's how she takes the power back from people who abused her. And that's the lesson she teaches Eleven. Embrace your anger, embrace your rage, embrace all of the bad things that were done to you, because that's how you make them not bad.
Sure.
Whatever you are, wear it like armor, and it can never be used to hurt you.
And if I would have loved that to be the case, I would have loved to watch that whole episode, and then when shit goes pear-shaped, watch it fall away.
Like, watch as, shit just gets... As she has to focus on keeping them from being seen, you watch the setting just kind of shift a little bit, and everything gets a little shittier and dingier.
That would be phenomenal storytelling. That would be a lovely moment where I would love to open my mouth like a giant zero and go, I was wrong, brilliance.
And to be fair, I'm probably fan fictioning here. That's probably not what was going on.
I'm sure they just built it on a soundstage. They did their best. Other than it not being lived in enough, we'll use that term, I think it was a really good, and that's why I haven't been saying it looks like it's on a soundstage, because I think they did a really good job of making
But
the
it is
area.
of the things in Stranger Things, which I also believe the Byers household is a soundstage, and
Oh, I'm sure a lot of stuff is.
but it's the most obvious. It's the only time I went in the series. It looks like a soundstage.
Yeah, yeah.
And okay, like, and I can understand. Like, it's not even like you need to change terms. You were just using a term that I contextually understand differently.
Sure, no, yeah.
Because when you say it wasn't dirty enough, it's like there wasn't enough poo on the walls.
I want a big pile of just garden dirt in the corner.
Garden dirt and cigarette butts. Just
There's a
what?
bunk there. There should be at least 60, 70 more beer bottles.
And that's why I was so baffled by what the fuck you were talking about. But no, I can understand it doesn't look like people actually live there. I would also love if we found out that's not what it looked like. We probably won't. I'm probably fan fictioning. But until I'm told otherwise, fuck it. That's my headcanon now.
All right.
Because that was too good. That's I feel proud about that little piece.
Yeah. It goes to reinforce the old adage.
Everything's better when nerds talk about it.
Fuck it, let's get hot.